Chapter 2. Inspired Dreams, a Divine Gift. In ancient times, many nations, particularly the Jews, gave deep respect to the meaning and inspirational significance of dreams. They sought for them and desired to follow them as a guide. The instance of Joseph's dream concerning the butler and the baker indicated the special significance of dreams among the Egyptians, especially with the pharaoh himself. Nebuchadnezzar was another example of spiritual recognition of dreams among the Chaldeans. Citizens of the Jewish nation were advised to be watchful of dreams, as they were often instructions from God. The scriptures abound with instances where God did indeed reveal his will through the means of dreams, and on occasions he raised up others who could interpret them. The Lord expressly declared that he would reveal himself and his will to his chosen servants, the prophets, by this means. See Num. 12:6. Why does the Lord inspire and communicate to men during the hours of sleep? The mind, while asleep, is not troubled with the active turmoils of the day, thus rendering it in a state of peace, which is necessary for the reception of inspiration. The hustle, confusion, anxieties, and fears of most daily activities seldom leave the mind in a proper state of calm repose, for which deep and solemn thoughts must occur. Many great men have noted the clarity of reason and inspiration, which has occurred within their minds during the hours of sleep. Undoubted proof has been afforded that the energy of the intellect is sometimes greater during sleep than at other times, and many a problem, it is asserted, has been solved in sleep, which has puzzled the waking sense. Cabness tells us that Benjamin Franklin on several occasions mentioned to him that he had been assisted in dreams in the conduct of many affairs in which he was engaged. Conulac states that while writing his course of studies, he was frequently obliged to leave a chapter incomplete and retire to bed, and that on awaking he found it, on more than one occasion, finished in his head. In like manner Condorcet would sometimes leave his complicated calculations unfinished, and after retiring to rest would find their results unfolded in his dreams. La Fontaine and Voltaire both composed verses in their sleep, which they could repeat on awaking. Dr. Johnson relates that he once in a dream had a contest of wit with some other person, and that he was very mortified by imagining that his antagonist had the better of him. Coleridge in a dream composed the wild and beautiful poem of Kubla Khan, which had been suggested to him by a passage he had read in Purchas Pilgrimage before he fell asleep. On awaking he had a distinct recollection of between 200 and 300 lines, and taking writing materials, began eagerly to set them down. Unfortunately he was interrupted before a quarter of the task was done, was called away to attend to some business which detained him an hour, and found when he returned to his writing that the remainder had vanished from his memory. The most remarkable testimony of this kind is perhaps that of Sir Thomas Browne, who declared that, if it were possible, he would prefer to carry on his studies in his dreams, so much more efficient were his faculties of mind when his body was asleep. He further adds that were his memory as faithful as his reason is then fruitful, he would prefer that season for his devotions. Mill Star 35-225. During the hours of sleep there is a serenity in which a person is without interruptions. Parley P. Pratt reasoned that this was a most receptive time for communication from our guardian angels, who could communicate to us through the medium of dreams. He wrote, "In all dispensations God has revealed many important instructions and warnings to men by means of dreams. When the outward organs of thought and perception are released from their activity, the nerves unstrung, and the whole of mortal humanity lies hushed in quiet slumbers, in order to renew its strength and vigor, it is then that the spiritual organs are at liberty, in a certain degree, to assume their wonted functions, to recall some faint outlines, some confused and half-defined recollections, of that heavenly world, and those endearing scenes of their former estate, from which they have descended in order to obtain and mature a tabernacle of flesh. Their kindred spirits, their guardian angels then hover about them with the fondest affection, the most anxious solicitude. Spirit communes with spirit, thought meets thought, soul blends with soul, in all the raptures of mutual, pure, and eternal love. In this situation, the spiritual organs are susceptible of converse with deity, or of communion with angels and the spirits of just men made perfect. In this situation, we frequently hold communication with our departed father, mother, brother, sister, son or daughter, or with the former husband or wife of our bosom, whose affection for us, being rooted and grounded in the eternal elements, or issuing from under the sanctuary of love's eternal fountain, can never be lessened or diminished by death, distance of space, or length of years. We may, perhaps, have had a friend of the other sex, whose pulse beat in unison with our own, whose every thought was big with the aspirations, the hopes of a bright future in union with our own, whose happiness in time or in eternity would never be fully consummated without that union. Such a one, snatched from time in the very bloom of youth, lives in the other sphere, with the same bright hope, watching our every footstep. In our meanderings through the rugged path of life, with longing desires for our eternal happiness, and eager for our safe arrival in the same sphere. With what tenderness of love, with what solicitude of affection will they watch over our slumbers, hang about our pillow, and seek to communicate with our spirits, to warn us of dangers or temptation, to comfort and soothe our sorrow, or to ward off the ills which might befall us, or perchance to give us some kind token of remembrance or undying love. It is the pure in heart, the lovers of truth and virtue, that will appreciate these remarks, for they know, by at least a small degree of experience, that these things are so. Those who are habitually given to vice, immorality, and abomination, those who walk in the daily indulgence of unlawful lust, those who neither believe in Jesus Christ, nor seek to pray to him, and keep his commandments, those who do not cultivate the pure, refined and holy joys of innocent and heavenly affection, but who would sacrifice every finer feeling at the shrine of lawless pleasure, and brutal desires, those persons will not understand and appreciate these views, because their good angels, their kindred spirits have long since departed, and ceased to attend them, being grieved and disgusted with their conduct. The Spirit of the Lord has also been grieved and has left them to themselves, to struggle alone amid the dangers and sorrows of life, or to be the associates of demons and impure spirits. Such persons dream of adultery, gluttony, debauchery, and crimes of every kind. Such persons have the foreshadowings of a doleful death and of darkness, and the buffetings of fiends and malicious spirits. But blessed are they who forfeit not their claims to the watchful care and protection of, and communion with, the heavenly powers, and pure and lovely spirits. We can only advise the other classes of mankind, and entreat them, by the joys of love, by all the desires of life, by all the dread of death, darkness, and a dreary hereafter, yea, by the blood of him who died, by the victory of him who rose in triumph from the grave, by their regard for those kindred spirits, which would gladly love them in worlds without end, to turn from their sinful course of life to obey the ordinances and commandments of Jesus Christ, that the Spirit of God may return to them, and their good angels and spirits again return to their sacred charge. Oh, what a comfort it is, in this dreary world, to be loved and cared for by all-powerful, warm-hearted, and lovely friends. A dream! What have not dreams accomplished? Dreams and their interpretation brought the beloved son of Jacob from his dungeon, made him prime minister of Egypt, and the savior of a nation and of his father's house. Dreams, and the interpretation of dreams, raised a Daniel from slavery or degrading captivity in Babylon, to wear a royal chain of gold, and to teach royalty how to rule, whilst himself presided over the governors and presidents of more than 100 provinces. Dreams, and the interpretation of dreams, have opened the future, pointed out the course of empire through all the troublous times of successive ages, till saints alone shall rule, and immortality alone endure. Parley P. Pratt, Key to Theology, pages 120 to 124. An interesting article on the subject of dreams was published by Elder Joseph G. Romney in the Millennial Star of 1864. Although it is quite extensive, its logical, historical, and spiritual explanations require a partial reprinting. It is by dreams that God often makes known his mind and will to mankind. In the Holy Scriptures we find many notable instances of this power, or of this gift, in which man, visited in his slumbers by the angels of God's presence, has partaken of that spirit of light and intelligence that surrounds him, and has, by its aid, seen the course of human events, and noted the results of human actions, which were long afterward to take place upon the earth. Dreams are of different kinds and are given for various purposes, each true one, however, being applicable to the situation and requirements of the individual receiving it, or of the people about whom it contains directions. Dreams must be divided into two kinds or classes, true and false. The former are given for a definite purpose, either as warnings of judgments to come, or telling of duties to perform in the present or the future. The latter are delusive, treacherous, and not to be counted as proceeding from a good source. Those beneficial to us and productive of happiness and joy are from a good and holy source, and are given for the purpose of strengthening our determinations and confining our faith, or of warning us of difficulties which will be presented before us by the adversary, to daunt our courage and lure us on to destruction by the seductive arts of the siren pleasure, and, by a proper and becoming attention to such warnings, we may know how to avoid disastrous consequences. In the New Testament we are told that different men were given divers gifts. One has all the powers and privileges of a seer, another has the gift of prophecy, another great power of faith, another the power to dream true dreams, and to another the power to interpret them. Or, in rare instances, all those great and glorious gifts have been centered in one individual. It is not often, however, that all these gifts are centered in one person. Few, indeed, have had that inestimable privilege. We have many other examples wherein men who received dreams from God and were obedient to their teachings realized blessings at his hands. They had faith in God sufficient to know truth from error. But nowadays, we may look a long while before we can find, amongst the people of the world, an individual who has thus faith enough to forsake his home and journey into a strange land in obedience to the requirements of God manifested in a dream. Skepticism is too rampant, infidelity is too prevalent to allow such simple confidence to exist. Worldly wisdom pretends to know more than does the inspiration of God's Spirit, were its expounder to be the judge, and those who will not listen to, nor believe in the revelations of his will to man in this age, will have still less confidence in dreams which chain their wandering fancies through the night. And, indeed, while they enjoy so little of the Spirit of God as they do, they are justified in not believing the dreams that they have given unto them, for they are delusive and vain, and are calculated to lead them astray. But to those of an inspired servant of God, they are equally unbelieving and, by being so, grow in still greater darkness than before. Dreams are great and glorious gifts of God to man, and they are given for his benefit, or his holiest and most deserving servants would not alone receive them or be called upon to interpret them. They are promised, however, by the apostle to all believers in Jesus Christ, and are a proof, along with other gifts, to those who receive them, that they are, indeed, believers, and that they are in that road which will lead them on to salvation. They are given to strengthen the faith of individual saints. A good dream from the Spirit of God is very easily told. It will make persons wiser, more humble and more obedient than they have ever been before. Mil. Star 26293. Being the recipient of inspired dreams is one of the great gifts of God. Such dreams can be of major importance to God's servants, so important that this means of communication is both recognized and appreciated by God's true disciples. We often pray for the gifts of God, and when He bestows them upon us, we are sometimes unaware, it seems to me, that we are in possession of them. We do not try to make ourselves understand the whisperings of the Spirit, nor do we always endeavor to distinguish between dreams in which there is an inspired meaning, and others to which there is no such importance attached. And too often, also, when a manifestation has been received, we are very anxious to tell it to our neighbors, that we may receive the praise of men. There is no fear that God's people will not receive more and still more of His blessings, just as fast as they prepare themselves for them, and learn how to use them in accordance with the divine will. We should be very careful not to lightly esteem the gifts of God, for by them we live, and without them we can never be saved in His kingdom. Let us encourage the good spirit, and strive earnestly for the best gifts. Live good, honest lives, and the reward of our actions here shall be life eternal hereafter. Mil. Star 5118. Essentially, dreams may be a means of inspiration, guidance, or comfort to a man, and as such, he should consider them as a blessing from God. Dreams may be the means of saving his life or directing his course toward eternal salvation.